All right, we've got big breaking news now coming in. Many had already said that something like this could happen. In fact, Kapil Sibal had warned of this. Many Congress leaders and others, opposition leaders had been warning of this. And now the amendment granting 10% reservation on the basis of economic background has been challenged in the Supreme Court already. This is just less than a day after this amendment became a reality after passing late last evening in the Rajya Sabha and the evening before in Lok Sabha. Let's go across to my colleague Nalini. Nalini, this is something many had seen coming. But we also wanted to know exactly who will be the person to challenge this. So tell us more of who's challenging this in the Supreme Court and in what basis.
Well, Shivani, what we're given to understand is that an organization called the Youth for Equality, which basically consists of several activists, has challenged this bill before the Supreme Court through a petition that has just been filed by them. And what they're essentially saying is that during the two rounds in the Parliament, in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, the amendment of Article 15 as well as Article 16 that has included new provisions in the form of Article 15 Clause 6 and Article 16 Clause 6 are both in violation of the basic features of the Constitution, and this violation needs to be prevented, which is why they've come forth and challenged this bill before the Supreme Court of India. What they're also saying is that there is an existing Supreme Court judgment that clarifies that reservation cannot go beyond the decided limit of 50%. So keeping that in mind, this particular bill that has been now produced before the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha also goes on to challenge that 1992 judgment of Indira Sahni that had in fact allowed for this. So basically on these two grounds, this petition has just now been filed before the Supreme Court. We'll have to wait and see exactly what the further procedure in this is going to be, exactly when the petition is going to be mentioned and when it comes up for hearing before the Supreme Court of India.
All right, so big news coming in from the Supreme Court. There's a group called Youth for Equality that has challenged the new reservations that are based on economic background and not on caste backgrounds, which are the traditional reservations in India. Nalini, I don't know if there is any confirmation that you can provide on this. There is a Youth for Equality group of some young activists, and they claim to be against caste-based reservations. That is what I can find out for now. So it is a little, a little questionable as to why they're challenging economic-based reservations in Supreme Court, because it's kind of actually going against the caste-based reservations, which this group is against.
Well, Shivani, that's exactly one of the main things that this particular organization is stating before the Supreme Court is that you cannot keep the economic criteria to be the sole basis for providing reservations for the people. In fact, I'm reading out exactly from the petition where they say that this amendment has inserted Article 15 Clause 6 and 16 Clause 6 in the Constitution, which permit the state to provide for special provisions or reservation for economically weaker sections of the citizens. They go on to say that the above aspects violate one or the other basic features of the Constitution, and hence such a manifest and obvious violation of the Constitution ought to be prevented. What they essentially mean is that on the basis of the financial strength of a person or the financial strength of the family, that cannot be the sole basis for you to go ahead and grant them any form of reservation. And also the fact that this bill is in clear violation not only of the constitutional principles, but also of the 1992 judgment that had put a cap on the reservations at 50%. So yes, essentially the group does act out against reservation, and that is why they've essentially gone ahead and challenged this particular reservation as well. They've said that economic criteria cannot be the only sole criteria to consider whether or not reservation should be granted, and that the new amendments that have been brought into Article 15 and 16 are both violative of the Constitution and should be prevented from going any further.
Right. All right, Nalini, just stay with us. I also want to go across to BJP MP Subramaniam Swamy, who had also noted certain reservations on this new criteria. Dr. Swamy, there is a group already that has challenged this in the Supreme Court. Now, they're claiming that this is against the basic, premise of the Constitution. Do you think something like this will stand given the majority with which it was passed in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha?
Not only was it passed by majority, it was a constitutional amendment bill, which means more than half the House was present, and more than 2/3 of the members voted for it. very, very strict conditions. And it cannot be challenged by anybody, including the Supreme Court. Now, unless you can show that you have affected the basic structure of the Constitution, where there is nothing of the kind in the, which would affect the basic structure. If they can prove that this 10% quota bill is affecting the basic structure, then all reservations will be declared violative of the Constitution. So it looks like some harebrained scheme of somebody, and he'll just be dismissed, that's all.
So I just want to ask you to understand this from you, Dr. Swami, that a lot of people have been saying this, including noted politicians said this as the discussions were taking place, that this will not stand the scrutiny of law. And a lot of people are saying that, this is a constitutional amendment, as you pointed out. The will of the people is represented by the parliament. So, but in our democracy, constitutional amendments can also be challenged. Do you feel that this will become a case of the executive versus the judiciary?
No, the judiciary is smart enough to know, because basic structure was a concept invented by the judiciary. And Mrs. Gandhi did all kinds of constitutional amendment bill during the emergency. Then after the emergency, the first thing they did was this. They brought in the basic structure concept, and that you cannot amend. In fact, Mrs. Gandhi might have even amended the Constitution to say that she's the next, she's being declared as the Rani of India. But you can't convert our Constitution by constitutional amendment to royalty, because that's against the basic structure. So that's about all.
So you're saying that this amendment is not in danger?
Absolutely nice, stupid challenge. I mean, somebody's doing it for publicity. I don't give it any importance. Of course, you should. I hope.
All right, Dr. Swami, I do appreciate you joining us and giving